So the recorder. Welcome everybody. This is the first meeting of the series that is being organized by the Working People's Charter and Labor Access, which is a research organization that we have set up to work with the Working People's Charter Network. And we are organizing a series of online webinars on the subject of examining workers' housing schemes, past, present, and the best practices arising from that arise from these policies and on the ground. So the first one that we are organizing is focused on the Western zone, in which we are looking at Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Goa, although we don't have any speakers from Goa. We are not claiming to be totally covering everything from the zone, because as Kirti Bhai said, and everybody else we have contacted also, so there are lots of things happening in the states which we may not be able to cover in just one webinar. So please take this as a beginning. We will first do west, north, east, west, west, north, and after
south,
west,
south,
east, and south, yes, south. So all those we will do one by one, and we also plan to do some at a more centralized level to discuss the more overarching issues, such as housing and land, and what are the various best practices that have come out of all these zonal meetings as well. So, so welcome to our first lineup of speakers. All the speakers have 10 minutes each. The first three keynote speakers will get a bit of extra time, 5 minutes extra time. And so I will start now. Give me 1 second. We will start with Anil Darshetkar, no?
Darshetkar, yeah.
It's spelled wrong here, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So who's an architect by education and by background, who has done research work in housing and finance as a hobby, and he's a visiting faculty for 30 years with over 30 years employment in the government sector in MHADA. So he was also 5 years Senate member in the university as a representative of the Chancellor. So we look forward to your very, for us, very special, very important experience. I mean, the experiment, you could say, of MHADA, and he will talk to us about this. Anilji.
Thank you, Meena. And hello to all the speakers as well as the audience. The task given about MHADA is, I joined MHADA, but all the workers' housing, if you see, that has been done by the earlier organization, that is MHB. Because when MHADA was already established, I mean, you can go to the third slide, please. See, I have given the chronological order. MHADA was established actually on 12th December 1977. There was a MHADA Act which combined the earlier establishment boards like Bombay Repairs and Reconstruction Board, Mumbai Housing Board, Vidarbha Housing Board, and including Maharashtra Slum Areas Improvement Board. So it was merged. It was thought that all the shelter sector should be under one roof. So that is how MHADA was formed, and now all the functions are covered under MHADA. The workers' housing, the next slide. Yeah. Earlier, the housing boards were taken up. Housing boards were taking up all the schemes which were prepared by Government of India and which was fully funded under 5-year plan. So that were three main schemes were there. That is, one is slum clearance scheme. Means that time the slum was very small quantity. They used to be shifted to the rental housing. That is called slum clearance scheme. This was implemented also by the municipal authorities apart from the housing boards. Then IHS. This is industrial housing scheme where the employers also were supposed to participate to some extent. Thereafter, subsidized industrial housing scheme. This was fully funded by the government, and all these schemes continued till 1970 when HUDCO was established. HUDCO was primarily formed because they thought that under 5-year plan, whatever funding is going in housing sector need to be returned back to the government. That is thinking. And in rental housing, it was only down the drain that was feeling. So HUDCO was formed as a company under Companies Act, and they prepared entire model which is called social housing scheme. Means instead of the categories of slum clearance or SIHS, etc., and it was called HIG MIG on the basis of income group. So that was the shift primarily from rental housing to ownership. And MHADA, it's I think third or fourth resolution in year 77, that is in the first meeting itself, that they won't build any rental housing anymore. Similarly, SIDCO had also taken such a decision that they won't construct anything rental housing. So we shifted completely from rental housing to this thing. Whether it was a effect of Rent Control Act or not, we have to examine that is separately. That particular time, MHADA has, before MHADA was established in 77, about 2 lakh tenements or 2.38 something tenements were built. And thereafter, it was increased to 25 to 30,000 per annum. Then, as per MHADA, we have taken a lot of experiments in different housing. That is MIDC, we tied up, we took out some land, but that particular 2-3 schemes which were floated were not very successful because the workers didn't find it lucrative enough. Because this HIG, MIG, I mean, as per HUDCO we had taken, but none of the scheme, nor Satara scheme took off. Marbad also we could not take off, so we had to return the land to MIDC, which was promised. Thereafter, MHADA undertaken the schemes with the help of municipal authorities. That is, the lands would be either belonging to municipal authority or could be acquired under MHADA Act. In that, we took a lot of schemes, Fulton, Yavatmal, Chiprun, Ratnagiri, Bid, Jalna, etc., etc. Out of that, Yavatmal was comparatively most successful. It has, I think, a lot of tenements. Chiprun, the land is acquired, but the last 10 years or 15 years, the scheme is not taken up. Ratnagiri, we implemented, that was also MIDC land, but this was undertaken with municipal authority. So that scheme is more or less complete because it was small scheme plotted development. Bid and Jalna were also successful because they were comparatively smaller. Thereafter, we took 2 projects in Solapur and as well as Chandrapur. The Solapur project was primarily based because that time the feeling was that a lot of land would be declared surplus and would be available to MHADA for under ULC Act. But that scheme was comparatively going on just like a municipality. It was going on the development model basis because not all the lands could come into the possession of MHADA. Chandrapur, it was almost virtually standstill because primarily the land acquisition becomes the major issue. Solapur, we had one more project that is called BD Workers Housing. So since it was workers housing, I thought of emphasizing this. This was also with HUDCO Finance and it was partly completed because again here the problem of land acquisition was there because here also we expected a lot of land from surplus land and the Urban Land Ceiling Act. Now about the old schemes which were implemented as a rental housing scheme, they were decided to be sold to existing occupants in the year 1978. That is by Government of India. And that was given to existing occupants and it was given on higher purchase basis. Now we call it EMI. Earlier it was called higher purchase. Means the installment would be almost similar amount to the rent. And that EMI were completed for 15 years. So around 1995, all the tenements which were constructed by then MHB are also. So now in MHADA layouts in Mumbai, virtually all the tenements are of ownership basis. Then, as I was saying, that this is chronological sequence of various schemes and policy issues as per Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, etc. These, I don't know whether all the people are familiar, so I thought of repeating it. 56 was the first Slum Areas Act at central level, thereafter Slum Clearance Scheme. The red ones are actual schemes and remaining all are other events. So 64 DP, so there were a lot of reservations, and that time it was thought that all the reserve lands will be acquired, and probably that is the reason for growth of slums. Then 70 HUDCO was established. 71 Maharashtra has Slum Areas Act. Then 73 Slum Improvement Board was established. 1976 ULC Act. So these are the what you call the various steps the government took as a housing policy, which partly or sometimes related to workers' housing, but this is 1987 we had a very international event, that is IYSH, or International Year of Shelter for the Homeless, and the objective was to remove homelessness by the year 2000. But now we are already in 2021 and we are shifted the target to housing for all in 2022. We don't know what can happen. Then we had MHP, NHP, that is National Housing Policy for first time. Earlier, whatever policies were virtually only programs. And then there is also Global Shelter Strategy that was also discussed at that time. And NHB, that is the first housing bank, was established as a subsidiary of RBI. So that was NHB, National Housing Bank. It is still functioning. And 1991, we have DREAM scheme, that is slum redevelopment scheme, that is the handing over tenements without any cost. So that is still going on. And now we have about 2.5 or 3 lakhs of tenements built in Mumbai already, which are covered under these schemes at different locations. But 50% of the population in Mumbai is supposed to be in slums. Out of that is about 20% of the target we can consider it as achieved to some extent after 25 years of this DC rule. Next. Now this I thought, because a lot of workers are already staying in this, and this was known in the year 1981 itself. In the table it is given that which are the category of employment, that is textile workers. Percentage of slum is 12.61 and percentage in entire Mumbai was 13.04. This is all the figures from the Kerkar Committee report. That is 1981. Now we are already 40, 50 years, but the percentage may not make much of a difference. Other manufacturing. So we can say about 50% of the slum dwellers are workers. So that we can say, and slum redevelopment scheme can be considered as one of the workers' housing scheme as on today. Next. So this is my conclusion from the data, that now whether slum redevelopment scheme can be considered for workers' housing, we have to think, or whether work from home for certain occupation can be allowed in that, because at present they have either residential or non-residential as a tenement for eligibility purposes. But if we see that now work from home is a norm, so whether we can consider that. Next. Now, this is what I thought that this issue should be presented before this August gathering for consideration, whether it is correct to impose workers' housing scheme through such agencies like MHADA or government, or whether it can be done as a PMAY that anybody can implement it. Then whether change of job, location, trade, and categorization is not included in the earlier eligibility, whether we can consider that, whether he can exchange. Then whether social housing scheme as per income group is appropriate for that or not. Whether allotment only by application and drawal of lots, because the eligibility is only checked on the income basis and not on the category of employment or I mean, its location of job or anything. So that is what we have to think. Then whether industry-based allocation is suitable, possible. And in case of BD workers, work from home and supply of raw materials and collection of finished material, but whether it is suitable for all type of workers. Because the central government earlier scheme for tree plantation workers as well as I mean handloom workers, etc. A lot of schemes were there, out of which I don't know. I didn't see anybody talking about the remaining scheme. MADA implemented BD worker, so I have considered BD worker as one of the scheme for the, especially for the workers. Next. This is what is my feedback, because I have actually worked in the formation. Means I was not there when the construction started, but till then I was involved in this project. So I have this feedback to give to all the people who are studying workers housing. All the people or poor people have got more aspirations to have RCC construction or Pakka construction and a Pakka house. They don't mind even the one room is constructed in phase one. So in Solapur, so happened earlier, we were thinking of doing load bearing houses with AC sheet roof, but they resisted. We had to change our plan, and they were ready to accept 7.5 meters square meter or only kitchen in phase one, but they wanted to have RCC. So that is the mindset people have, and it is very difficult to change this mindset. Then they were lucky enough to have all ground floor tenements with incremental pattern, but here the cost of foundation was very high because it is the black cotton soil. The site chosen was primarily agriculture, and the foundation cost was comparatively heavy even for MADA, as well as when they want to increase the size of the tenement, definitely it would have been also larger. In many cases, women folk were actually BD workers and male workers were working somewhere else. So whether such a thing is allowed, eligibility, we left it to the board, local board there. So for us, it was not a problem, but whether this is only a gimmick for availing the house or not, we'll have to think on this issue. Then we are thinking of site and services pattern would have been much better, because the water supply laying, services laying is not possible for individuals. While construction of house, any individual or any family can undertake as per his capacity. But that was not also accepted, because the central government norm also insisted that there has to be a full-fledged tenement and the costs were fixed accordingly. So none of the stakeholders were ready to accept site and services pattern. Probably after this, when World Bank came to India, that time this pattern was forced upon Indian situation, and now we are having a lot of experiments with site and services. That time land was acquired for this project, because ULC land, if we were waiting, we could not have completed the scheme, because ULC land come in different parts at different locations. It is not possible to implement about 5,000 tenements which we are planning to do in the 3 phases could be completed in such a manner. So we had to acquire the land, and that is why definitely it was becoming costly, because even under ULC, only part of the land from the landowner comes in the possession and not entire land. So that is why the pattern of special planning authority or special project authority may not work. In case of PMAY, small projects can be taken up under that, and similarly, it may be advisable to have such a type of project where small projects can be taken up. So perception is important, mindset in the decision making, and that is technical advice is always ignored. I can say even today, and the politicians' views and the financial persons' views and bureaucratic views are given more importance and technical aspects are because maybe our communication skills may not be that much sufficient to impress upon the people, but that is the situation today. Next. So that's all I wanted to say for workers housing, past, present, and future. I think I completed my mandate with the satisfaction of the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dashitkar. It was it was a packed presentation. There is a lot that we have to unpack from it. And I hope we get in future discussions, I hope we get that opportunity.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And you were very much within time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So next we have Mr. Vishram Patil, who is a social scientist and planner with over 3 decades of experience in working with MMRDA. After MHADAP, now we have MMRDA, which is a regional planning and development authority by metropolitan region. So he has worked on regional planning, financing of urban infrastructure, land acquisition and rehabilitation and resettlement. He has a rich experience of working on R&R projects in Mumbai, and he is also experienced in dealing with legal and social challenges of implementing R&R. Mr. Vishram Patil, between 10 and 15 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me. Hello to everyone. I have, for the last 10 years, I was fully involved in the resettlement and rehabilitation of PAPs of MMRDA's various projects, mostly rehabilitation in Mumbai in various R&R colonies. So is the R&R angle by which I'm invited to speak here. It's workers' housing, but R&R per se has nothing to do with workers' housing as such. But as Mr. Darshitkar pointed out, we have a nearly 90% employment in the informal sector, and a lot of these people are poor who stay in slums in Mumbai and elsewhere also. So a lot of slum population are probably informal workers. These are the ones who benefit with the R&R. These slums are also located mostly on lands which are reserved in the development plans for various public amenities. So when a particular infrastructure project is to be implemented, we have to actually shift a lot of slum dwellers. So roads in Mumbai which were done, which were only on paper, and actually on the ground it was full of slums. Even metro project, for example, some marginal spaces along the road have to be cleared by removing slums. So there are encroachments on public lands at various places. These are the slums. Now, the good part about slums in Maharashtra is that the Maharashtra government had taken a very considered view and had protected slum dwellers. So, of course, the cutoff date for protection has changed over a period of time from 1976 onwards up to 2000, and now a structure built before 2000 December and occupied by someone else post 2000 is also eligible for protection. So as a result of that, many of these slum dwellers are eligible for rehabilitation if they have to be removed from their places for undertaking any infrastructure project. So this is a slum redevelopment, as Mr. Darshitkar pointed out, came into being in around 1995 as a state's policy, and also Slum Rehabilitation Authority was established for this purpose. And just to tell you about the overall numbers, as Mr. Darshitkar pointed out, the number of slum dwellers who got such housing could be about 2.5 lakhs to 3 lakhs in last 25 years. Now here the what is given is free of cost. The people who are displaced from a place and are given a tenement are given that tenement free of cost. It is given on ownership basis. I mean, the person who gets the allotment owns the tenement through the cooperative society, which is subsequently established for the building. It's a self-contained tenement. So the water supply, the toilet, they are all within the tenement. And the DC rule under which these are built actually uses FSI as the market instrument for getting this done. So the public authority, be it SRA or MMRD, which also has the power of SRA, gets all this done free of cost. It doesn't pay any money to construct this kind of housing, and which is made available for the project affected persons, primarily the slum dwellers. This is done against the TDR. So the developer, the landowner developer, they come forward offering their schemes for construction of PAP housing, which are approved by SRA or MMRDA, and he constructs the housing in the as per the norms specified in the development control regulations, and hands over the land with the tenements to the SRA free of cost against the TDR. So they get transferable development rights, the development rights to construct somewhere else in Mumbai, which is 1:1.33 for the built up area and 1:1 for the land area. So this is how the free things come for this. Apart from this, the developer also pays certain infrastructure charges, which for in the city of Mumbai, it's 840 something, in the suburbs it's 670, which are supposed to be used by the municipal authority. I mean, SRA is supposed to hand over such money to the municipal authority for upgrading the infrastructure in the areas nearby such colonies, R&R colonies. That is necessary because the density of population in such R&R colonies is very high, because high FSI is granted and a lot of tenements are constructed, which are not originally envisaged in the development plan of the city. Apart from that, the developer also provides, used to provide 20,000 rupees per tenement towards the maintenance cost, which is now increased to 40,000. The tenement size has also over a period of time changed from 225 to 269. Now it is more than 300. So 30 square meter of carpet area, not the built up area. The new SRA housing has to be with 330 square meter of carpet area, each tenement. If we look at the Marina had circulated a concept note on which affordability, adequacy, resilience, and decency of housing was were raised as adequate housing for the workers. So here, the first criteria of affordable housing, it's given free of cost. Some people, of course, argue that why are you giving free housing to people? There is a logic to it in the sense that you are depriving them of the house which they are currently occupying. So it's not over and above what they have that you are giving free. The people have been removed, their houses have been demolished, and they are in return given. So there are a lot of hardships involved in displacement and rehabilitation. So government probably took a view on that as to give free tenements to this. In terms of the adequacy of size, as I explained, we already have reached 300 square feet of carpet, 30 square meter of carpet area, which is about 325 square feet of built up area. Sorry, square feet built up carpet area, which converted with a 25% built up additional, then can be more than 400 square feet. So it's not 50 square meter as such, but it's substantially large now. As I also mentioned, all this housing has the facilities provided within the tenement. So what was not there in the slums is available here definitely. The water tap is there, drinking water, the toilet is there. And the colony where such buildings are located also has roads, street lights. It has networks of water and sewerage connection. So like any other buildings in Mumbai. Now, what is, of course, this is the good part of the good picture of the R&R colonies. And I would like to also quote a number from MMRDS side that we generated about 65,000 houses in this form. And the total housing generated in the TDR component of SRA could be in the range of 85,000 to 1 lakh, apart from the in situ slum redevelopment. So that's another part of it, where under the DC rules, slum dwellers are rehabilitated on the same plot in a separate building, and the remaining plot is used for free sale, which is not a TDR based concept. But there again, the slum dwellers get similar benefits, similar tenements, similar facilities and things like that. So in these two schemes together, as Mr. Dashirkar pointed out, probably have generated 2.5 to 3 lakh housing in Mumbai. Now, if we compare this with any other affordable housing program of any public agency, private agencies don't do affordable housing in this sense of the word, then these numbers are significantly large. I mean, compared with anything which MHADA did or anybody did in Mumbai or in MMR, Konkan Housing Board, whatever, public housing, public affordable housing, be it sites and services, be it any kinds of things, they don't come anywhere near these numbers. And if we had left it to market to build affordable housing, which we are still talking about, I don't think we would have got this kind of housing stock at all. So although it is meant for project affected people, it means that slum dwellers will be displaced. It means that there are hardships involved. The fact remains that so much of housing stock, affordable housing stock, comes into market. Of course, there is restriction of 10 years for not selling these off, and the actual experience is slightly different than that. People do sell them off, go away or rent them away and things like that. All said and done, my important point on this was that through this instrument, over a period of 25 years, such a substantial housing stock, which is permanent in nature, has come into market, and either as the first recipient or subsequent buyers of this stock, workers would definitely must be benefiting from this. There are certain issues like, for example, the designs of R&R colonies can be better. Generally, the private sector, the private developer builds these houses trying to fit to the norms of the DC rules and maximizes his profit and minimizes his cost. So everything is done in a manner which reduces the cost for the developer. However, better designs are definitely possible. Better designs for buildings are possible. Better designs for arrangement of tenements possible. Better designs for floor arrangement, common spaces, for the community as such, or even floor level common spaces. A lot of things can be done. I think this is for an architect to be able to apply their mind and see with the same FSI consumption and same density, a lot of designs can be improved. Our experience of having rehabilitated around 45,000 households and business establishments so far, which has been happening since quite some time now. So some of our earliest colonies where we've shifted people were in 2004-5. So we are 15 years already past that time. Our experience has shown that the people who go there actually lack capacity in managing their buildings, and managing the entire colony by the association of societies is even more difficult. So these problems are faced by even the normal high income societies where 10 people cannot come together and decide on one single matter and agree on something. Here it is even more difficult. So financially, to some extent, increasing the maintenance charges to 40,000 per tenement has helped, but that is not adequate. So people have to actually pay something there from their pockets to towards the maintenance charges of the buildings. Repairs, of course, come up. So there are mechanical elements, there are pipes, there could be some leakages happening over a period of time, which need to be repaired. So people lack capacity in financial capacity and more the managerial capacity to manage, technical capacity to manage these affairs. There are also some other issues, particularly the common amenities which are provided in the R&R colonies. So what happens is at the stage of completion of buildings, the developer provides something there, something. And it is supposed to be actually subsequently taken care by the municipal authority. So they are supposed to develop these amenities, be it schools, gardens, open spaces, whatever. And these are the facilities which are supposed to be available for the people who are residing in these colonies. However, the municipal government has their own priorities, and the investment into these amenities don't come along with the people who come there. So many times it is seen that these spaces remain vacant or then are abused, used for variety of purposes. And that creates an issue. So here we have a model where housing is created for project affected people. It is actually affordable. It's good in the market, but the project agency is interested only in shifting people. So the exit of the project agency from the R&R colony doesn't happen because people keep depending on them. People have problems with their capacities to manage these things, and nobody is there to take place of the project agency to subsequently manage these colonies. So we don't have an institutional mechanism right now whereby the sustainability of people staying in R&R colony continues in terms of the infrastructure provision, the surety of that, the timing of that, the maintenance of that. So over a period of time, some of these colonies start looking quite shabby, and that's why they are often called vertical slums. However, I would like to point out here that we have nearly 48 colonies in Mumbai, and calling these colonies as vertical slums by seeing one or two colonies and actually visiting 48 of them and seeing how things are there elsewhere is really an eye opener. And I know of so many examples where things are so very well done, and people also come together and manage these affairs. So I hope that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patil. That also you have, I don't know, everybody has been very disciplined. I think some of the points that you raised here, we are really coming to the crux of the issue, where earlier Mr. Darshatkar had also talked about some very central issues like land, and then of course the maintenance of the buildings that we are talking about. Who will maintain, who will actually help residents there later once it is built? And as you said, the agencies are still involved. How involved are they? How can that be institutionalized? What is the other mechanisms that can be in place in order to make these places more sustainable? Because people suffer. It's one thing for people to look from outside and call it slums, because that's what people normally do. Wherever poor people stay, it's called slums, because they don't have the wherewithal or the support of the government to be able to maintain that. So I think some of the issues that both the speakers have raised about also about common amenities, because instead of looking upon it as a problem, it should be looked upon as an asset, because there is this as an asset, and how can that be? So I think that we, in the future discussion about this, I hope that in the discussion, the questions which people, because I think that the participants should know that they can put questions in the Q and R. Where is the Q and R? Reactions. There is a box called reactions. You can give it there, or you can put it in the chat box. Please direct your questions to the speakers, and or your comments if you would like to speak after all the interventions are over. So thank you very much. And now I call upon she is a visiting lecturer in the JJ School of Art and Architecture, that is Rachna Sansad. She is also part of the Mumbai Transformation Project. She has many publications to her credit. Sorry, I'm very sorry. I have, it is not Smita Vangankar who is now going to speak. I'm sorry, it's Sulakhshana Mahajan. I'm very sorry, Smita, please wait for about 15 minutes.
None of us heard the name. It got cut.
Oh, you didn't? Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So yes, now we expect, we will now hear Sulakhshana Mahajan. She's an architect and urban planner, and I said she is in Rachna Sansad. She's also part of the Mumbai Transformation Project. So now we will hear Sulakhshana. Please go ahead.
Hello everyone. I'm Sulakhshana Mahajan. Thank you for inviting me. Can Marina start the presentation I have sent you? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to talk about BDD Chawls. I had been asked to do research on the BDD chawls in 2009 by the government and at the Mumbai Transformation Unit, and we did a very thorough survey of all the participants, all the residents, as well as all the buildings and the history of these chawls. And we came up with the report with suggestion how to redevelop them. Next slide, please. They were constructed. Next slide. Yeah, this Bombay Development Department, that's why they were called BDD chawls, were constructed during last slide. After the pandemic, which had killed thousands and thousands of people during 1918 to 1920, the government came up with the scheme of constructing houses for workers, and especially the textile workers in Mumbai. And the land was acquired at Varli, Naigaon, NM Joshi Marg and Shivdi at 4 places. Aim was to reduce crowding, which was happening in the chawls, workers' chawls, mainly located in the textile mills. The old surveys had indicated to the government that the per capita space available to a person in this chawls, in the old private chawls, was about 2 square meters, that is 20 square feet. And so the government decided to construct tenements with 4 square meter per person, that is 40 square feet per person, and hence the rooms were constructed 160 square feet per tenement, with common toilets and common bathrooms at the end of the building. Totally 2,207 buildings were constructed on roughly 200 acres of land, and 16,000 tenements were constructed within 3 years. The rent before year 2000 was 17 rupees, which was in earlier 1930s was about 9 rupees, and it was increased to 17 rupees in 1945. After that, it was frozen till 2000, and the present rent the BDD chawl residents pay is about 22 rupees per month. So it's very cheap, very affordable. Next slide. Hello. Hello.
Sulakhshana,
Yeah. Now I think my internet connection was disrupted.
To show the earlier slide, this one, the one with the picture.
Yeah, show the earlier slide. The earlier slide has a plan. These were the 10 rooms per floor, and at the end you can see the toilets, and there is a staircase in the middle, and in front of staircase there is a common meeting place. And these rooms are very well ventilated with huge big windows, and there is a corridor in the middle is very broad, and you can see in the corridor people can put a bed at night, they can put things, many cupboards, and this space is additional space for residents of the rooms. And you can see how the layout is there. There is an open space in the colony, and people use a lot of these spaces are grounds, and also the schools are nearby. So all the amenities, urban amenities are available to the residents, and that's why 90% of the original residents or their family members still occupy the spaces, and very little movement has been there. No one likes to sell the house. Some of them have rented out. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the land was purchased by the government, and it's still owned by the PWD and the government. And one of the Shivdi lands is only BPT land, Bombay Port Trust land. The tenants are now virtual owners. They pay only 22 rupees a month, but everything else is maintained by the government at huge cost. There are about 350 PWD engineers and workers who maintain the 16,000 tenements. But there is still a lack of cooperation and trust among the residents, but over the period, they have colonies, and they are quite socially active and culturally active, and they trust each other now. For though they have there are some differences, but the money they pay and the government and maintenance is very poor. Poor operation maintenance. Because of that, the house degradation of building has taken place within a short time in last 20-25 years. But now the buildings are about 100 years old, and they are very strong actually. When we visited, the houses are not dilapidated structurally, but their maintenance is poor and they need a lot of investment refurbishing, but they are still livable and they can be made livable even if they are not redeveloped. But there is a crowding and congestion in the houses. Some of the houses have 10 people, but most of the houses, average housing is only 4 or 5 people. So it has not been increasing over the of the people, family members have moved out when they felt that they are capable of, or their affordable houses are available in suburbs. Next.
Sulakhshana ji, can I request you to, maybe you can turn off your camera. That might help your internet speed.
Yeah, hello. I think my internet is a little giving me trouble. Anyway, but the redevelopment has been promised for last, I think 15-20 years it has been in the air, and the government keeps on saying that we will redevelop them. But government has ultimately came up with the scheme through MADA. And what they have promising is that self-sufficient bigger homes. Bigger means homes with 500 square feet. I will show you the plan. A free ownership housing like MMRDA, what Mr. Patil had said. But people are demanding large corpus fund for the maintenance so that they will not be they will be looked after much better. But this whole scheme is political populism. There is expected investment about huge investment, 4,000 crore each at the plot is investment is expected by the developers. Then the profit, it is actually not, though the houses are free for the present residents, it is not free housing constructed by public sector. It is for profit proposal, and have big developers are interested in these. The impact we feel, whatever we have studied of the old housing, the new housing, and the proposed housing is impact will be extremely high urban densities. Nowhere in the world we will find it's almost 2 or 3 times the densities you find in Hong Kong. They will lead to unhygienic housing without any light and ventilation, and there is no, the density is high, there are going to be 3 times more tenements, and the lack of open space will increase because most of the land will be now converted into residential buildings. So this is the sample. You can see the existing model of the existing tenement on the left, and you can see the proposed model, which is at Worli. The tall structures are for sale. They are 65-story structure with 10 stories of parking. And the rehab housing is about 23 stories with 3 floors of parking. So basically this appears to be a parking proposal rather than housing proposal, and it's not free housing for these people because they are going to pay for by their health and inconvenience. Next slide, please. This is one of the plan, typical plan. You can see 2 bedrooms, 2 toilets, 1 living room and kitchen, and then how they are organized around 1 staircase and 2 lifts, and the stories are 23 stories. These buildings have been provided with special DCR, very lot of safety norms, a lot of ventilation and lighting norms have been compromised, and these buildings will be constructed so densely that they will not allow healthy living for the people, though it may provide larger houses. And these plans are for rehab housing, and for sale housing, there are much larger flats. What has happened in case of Worli, you saw this model, most of these tall structures will stop light and ventilation for all the rehab buildings. And not only that, these tall structures will also shadow all the surrounding areas with existing houses. So basically, the whole proposal made by MHADA is extremely high density, very high FSI and unhealthy living, and the whole area will experience huge crowding, and it will have detrimental impact on health of not only these people but also surrounding areas. Next. You can see what the PAP, the RR housing, what Mr. Patil had suggested, had described. On the right-hand side, you see 3 schemes, which are actually RR schemes, project affected housing at Govandi. And these have been, doctors have done the research. It has found that this Lallubai compound, Natwarlal compound, has very high percentage of TB and also untreatable TB, and people are really affected. Their health is affected, and you can see there is hardly any space between 2 buildings and the 2 tenements, and the corridors are also very small. The lower floors don't get light, no ventilation. There is lack of open space. In the middle, you can see, and so basically, in the name of free housing, what has been offered is extremely dense, extremely poorly built, extremely huge crowding affecting health and well-being of people. There are mental health, there are physical health problems, and actually the maintenance of buildings is much cheaper than the health cost people are paying through their which they can't really afford. And Tata Institute of Social Studies is working on these TB projects because people have to be helped with their health projects. And one of the Mahul PAP housing is so poorly built that High Court has asked BMC to pay 15,000 rent for all these people. So poorly built housing is not really it's not a well-being scheme for the workers. So basically, and the similar pattern has been suggested for BDD redevelopment at all the 3 places. And I'm afraid the situation in the middle of Mumbai wards near the mill workers will be extremely dangerous, like Govandia and Mahul. Next slide, please. So housing policies that need to be rejected by workers is frozen rents, because as you see, MHADA and MMRD and SIDCO, no one is ready to build for rent because of the political pressure, and they are unable to collect rent. So workers have to think that if they want a good housing, they have to pay rent as their responsibility. Free housing is not really free. People are paying through their health. Extreme density, extreme FSI should be rejected by architects, by industrial workers, by all the workers and all the Mumbaikars, because this is going to affect not only the people who are going to be housed, but it is going to affect the whole of Mumbai. Lack of choice of, because they are not paying anything, they have been bulldozed into decision making. Projects that deny participation, no participation, for profit redevelopment should be opposed, and monetization of public land in the name of free housing also needs to be opposed. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. That is all I have to say about BDD Chawls. I won't say much more because myself and Mr. Shirish Patel, we have filed a PIL against the redevelopment, unhealthy redevelopment in the High Court. So it would not be proper for me to explain too much about the new scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sulakshana. This was very, very informative. And I think what you said about BDD Chal and some of the issues that you raised there is perhaps the issues that is being faced with many other redevelopment projects across the city. But BDD has been very special, very iconic in the entire Mumbai landscape. And I think that the discussion and the questions that are being raised, not just by you, but by the others also, maybe we will have to look at what are the solutions then to the questions of housing people here and what to do about the people who are already here, the kind of redevelopment, the kind of resettlement, etc. So we will be doing another webinar. There are many things in which we will be looking at what are the possible alternatives, and that we will be doing in another session very soon, which I hope will actually deal with some of the questions that you raised, because you said density. So it's density versus right to people to live within the city. It's right of people to live within the city as opposed to health. So there are many, many kind of contradictions and, warring parameters that we will have to look at. So I hope we will be able to hear you again. Yes, of course, it's sub judice, but maybe some general comments about how this can be done. Because the question of affordable, decent, and resilient, public housing that we are raising, and we would like to move towards the solution. So thank you very much, Sulakshana. Now we have Smita Vaingankar, who is currently pursuing her PhD at TIS. She also works with Urban Observatory. She has been working on issues of governance, and she has been working on the issues of housing and land rights for a while. Smita.
Hello to all. Sorry, I can't turn on my screen. There is some problem, but I think everyone can hear me properly. Basically, I'm going to present or share my learning through the research conducted on Gunthewari in Maharashtra. We have conducted this research in the year 2000, in between 2012 to 15, and I don't think so there are so much, I can say, the changes happened in this phenomena, because after reading some newspaper articles, what is my basically, I can say the argument is that the government is still seeing this Gunthewari development in a very, very, I can say it's a one approach to deal with the informality, and it's just like a single approach. I really wonder, because when Shweta told me that you have to speak on the Gunthewari and the background is about examining the workers' housing. So basically, I think this whole exercise is about taking the review of the housing schemes for workers, policies, strategies led by the government. But I really wonder how Gunthewari development or a settlement we can see as an housing scheme declared by the government, because we all know that the Gunthewari development or Gunthewari settlement is not a part of any scheme or any policy, but it is some sort of fallout. And still it is a best, or I can say better option to those who cannot afford cannot afford the house in the real estate market. And this is because this is a very prevalent practice in Maharashtra. mostly in the small and medium towns. And we found such settlements, Guntevari developments, in the periphery of the city. So basically, I hope that everyone know about the phenomena of a Guntevari. Basically, it is a layout or a plot around 1089 square feet. So which is a which is a less than the applicable planning norms, that is a 3000 square feet. Of also these all the plots or construction on the land which is agricultural land, which is unlawful basically, because all the developments are allowed on a urbanable land, or I can say the residential zone. So of course, these all are the housing construction is against the planning norms. So this whole Guntevari settlement seen or recognized in the eyes of the government or a planning authority is a unlawful. It's an informal settlement. But still, when we started researching or we started conducting the research in a small towns, basically we research in a Sangli, Miras, Kupwara Municipal Corporation, Akola, and Aurangabad, these three cities, and we really surprised. Basically, what the government official data shows us and the actual what is happening and what is we can see on the ground, it is a tremendously gap in that, because here there is no actual data collected by the or gathered in the government authority, any government authority, because they have only the number of the regularization proposal of the Guntevari. So actual settlements, not settlements, actual layouts, or how many people are resides in such settlements, there is no official data. But there is official data, but it is really very underestimated. But when we started talking with the officials, the municipal officials, also the elected representative peoples, and we really surprised. So basically, in case of Sangli, Miras, Kupwara, I think more than the 50% population reside in such settlement. In Aurangabad, we took only 4 settlements, which is known as the Guntevari settlements, and it is about 80,000 houses. So you can imagine how many people resides over there, such settlement. In Akola, there are 18 to 20 villages in the periphery of the city where around 20% of the city population housed in there. When we started talking with the people, and we started mapping basically the profile of the people who are buyers of such houses. And yes, of course, those all are the workers belong to unorganized sector. And when we talked about it, and it's very interesting when we say ask them ki, why you find it affordable, why you come to buy such type of a house which are the illegal, which treated as a illegal, which treated as a informal. But the answer coming from them is very interesting. They are saying, see, we are not residing in a slum. So they treated it as a slum. It's like a free housing and they are an encroacher. But we are buying this land. We are buying these layouts. So we are paying something and we have some buying selling agreement between us. So it is a house we bought. So in 2003, so when the we see the what is affordability to them. So when we see the one agreement sell deed, we can say that of course it is on a 100 rupees stamp paper. It is not all the things that commonly followed. So in 2003, the one plot 1000 square feet, it's around 25,000 in Akola. So you can see the range of the affordability of the people. It's really very sad part of the government also, as a state government authority, that they are seeing that is a lot of informality is happening. But still, they are, I think, they don't have that motive or the objective to deal this informality. In 2000, the government, of course, thought about and come up with the one strategy. So that is called the Maharashtra Guntevari Act, that Regulation, Control and Upgradation Act 2001. So now it is 2021. So almost 20 years. This is the act. This is very small amendment. Basically it is at that time of amendment where they said that the construction till 2000 going to be regularized under this act. So further that such type of developments are going to be controlled. But it's very, I think everyone know that the recent Cabinet of State Government of Maharashtra passes the proposal that till December 2020, up to the 2020, they are considering under this act. So this is the act or amendment through which this regularization is happening. It's very, I think, I can say that it is one of the form of the confession made by the state government while enacted this act. The statement of object and reason of this act mentioned that although Gunthewari developments are unlawful and there is an obvious need to curb such development, it is at the same time to be appreciated that is neither practicable or undesirable to demolish on a mass scale the old and long existing construction mode on such plot. This is especially so because the formal housing market has failed to meet the demands of the economically weaker section of the society for a shelter in terms of both quantity and price. So Gunthewari developments are a form of informal housing and have to be viewed as a positive response. So in the act itself, government confessed that they are failed to satisfy the current needs of the economic weaker section. Is it true that it is the basically the way of I can say it is also give the opportunity the people who cannot buy the house from the real estate market. Also, we should also accept it that the state authorities, developing authorities like MHADA or MMRDA, their performance is also very poor to build such, I think, public housing to this section. Also, one of the important part is that even though these are in the eyes of the people that they are affordable housing, but the condition of a basic infrastructure is really very poor. So for that, and because it is an illegal construction or illegal layouts, municipal authorities also not ready to provide them the basic basic amenities. So this act allow that if people are ready to pay some fine, they call this as a regularization fee and plus development fee. So then municipal authority can provide them the basic infrastructure or basic amenities. So it is a sort of, I can say, midway that municipal authorities can municipal authorities can legalize or regularize their structure, but not the land. So, and I think this model also is have a very local specific features. So it is operate very differently from and differ from city to city. If we take a case of Pimpri Chinchwad, Pune, Nanded, Aurangabad, these big cities where there is a very organized construction happening, and there is a big settlement, whereas the cities like Sangli, Miraj, Kupwada or other small cities where there is a the operative part of all this settlement is still informal or it is a very small scale. But I think we should accept that, or I can say accept that rather than it is a confirm that this is the basically the way of basically the people find out the way to fulfill their needs of a housing through the Gunthewari settlement. And it's a very common phenomena, all over the state of Maharashtra. So when after reading the concept note shared by Shweta, I try to answer the question given in the annexure 1. And I wonder how to see this Gunthewari development. Because at one hand, it is a informal, unlawful, illegal. But at the same time, the other law make it is lawful. Because this several planning laws challenges by this development, Gunthewari development. But at the same time, the one law called is Gunthewari Regularization Act 2000 give the opportunity to regularize that. So so my really question is about how we are going to see such type of a development, and how we going to locate this model in the larger housing policy for the state, and basically housing to the poor or housing to the workers. That is my larger question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Smita. Gunthewari, as far as I know, this exists only in Maharashtra. I don't know whether in the nearby states it exists, this kind of traditional method of land measurement and the construction and informality, illegality. And so thank you very much. This is very, especially for people who are from outside Maharashtra, this will be very educative. And so we go on to the next Mr. Vasnik. Mr. Anil Vasnik is a journalist. He is a convener of the Shahar Vikas Manch, which is a people's collective for land rights in the city of Nagpur in India. He has been working on issues of land and housing in the capacity of journalist and activist for over 35 years. He has worked with leading Marathi newspapers as a journalist, has been actively involved also in various people's movements. Anil.
सभी को नमस्कार। हम लोग नागपुर में जमीन का अधिकार और विकास के प्रश्न पर गत 30 वर्ष से काम कर रहे हैं, और नागपुर में जो एक पट्टा हुआ है, मालकी पट्टा करके जो सरकार का आदेश निकला था, उसके आधार पर हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं। और नागपुर में जो मालकी पट्टे का प्रोसेस चल रहा है उसके साथ हम लोग जुड़े हुए हैं। नागपुर शहर भारत का एक महत्वपूर्ण शहर है और देश के मध्य में है, सब लोग जानते हैं। और इस शहर की जो आबादी है करीबन 30 लाख है, और उसमें से 30% आबादी वो स्लम्स में रहती है। और स्लम्स में रहने वाले अधिकतर वक्ताओं ने अभी तक कहा कि अधिकतर लोग जो स्लम्स में रहते हैं वो हमारे श्रमिक भाई है, और श्रमिकों ने ही ज़्यादातर अपने घर, अपना आशियाना स्लम्स में बना के अपना घर जो रहने की जगह है वो बनाई है। तो ऐसे श्रमिकों को, ऐसे झुग्गीवासियों को, उनको ज़मीन का अधिकार मिले, ये मांग हम लोग 20 साल से कर रहे थे। और उसी के आधार पे सरकार ने कुछ निर्णय बीच में लिए। हम लोगों का कहना था कि जो भूमि है, भूमि का मालिकाना अधिकार, मालिकाना पट्टा, यही झुग्गीवासियों का सुरक्षा कवच है, और वो दिला देने के बाद ही उसके घर, उसका जमीन का अधिकार सुरक्षित हो सकता है। ऐसा हम लोगों का कहना था, आज भी है। हमारे शहर में 424 झोपड़पट्टियां है, उसमें से 299 अधिकृत है, घोषित है, और 127 अघोषित है। और नागपुर की स्थिति ऐसी है कि नागपुर की अधिकतर बस्तियों के जो घर है वो 70 से 80% घर अच्छे पक्के बने हुए हैं, और सभी बस्तियों में अधिकृत मूलभूत सुविधाएं, नागरिक सुविधाएं हो चुकी है। और इसलिए नागपुर की बस्तियां, स्लम्स बस्तियां और मुंबई और अन्य शहरों की बस्तियों में बहुत बड़ा अंतर हम लोग देख सकते हैं कि नागपुर की बस्तियां एक सुव्यवस्थित कॉलोनी की तरह बसी हुई है। जैसे कि मुंबई में जो स्लम्स है उसकी तुलना हम लोग नागपुर से नहीं कर सकते। नागपुर का एक अलग ही डेवलपमेंट हुआ है स्लम्स के बारे में। तो ये जो मालकी पट्टे का जो संदर्भ है, तो 2002 में 10 जुलाई को महाराष्ट्र सरकार ने एक शासन निर्णय निकाला था, और उसमें कहा था कि स्लम में रहने वाले रहीवासियों को 30 साल के लिए लीज पट्टा दिया जाएगा। लेकिन उस जीआर पर कोई कार्रवाई नहीं हुई थी, और उसके लिए हम लोगों ने 2004 से शहर के विभिन्न संगठनों ने एक साथ मिलके आवास अधिकार अभियान और शहर विकास मंच का गठन करके हम लोगों ने जमीन की मालकी पट्टा देने की मांग की और उसके लिए संघर्ष छेड़ा था। और काफ़ी संघर्ष के बाद 2012 में ये जो विषय है मालकी पट्टे का, जमीन के अधिकार का, इसको पॉलिटिकल मुद्दा बनाने में हम लोग सफल रहे और कुछ पॉलिटिकल पार्टियों ने इसका समर्थन किया और उसके कारण फिर सत्ता परिवर्तन के बाद 2016 में सरकार ने 2 JR निकाले, शासन आदेश निकाले कि जो जहाँ पर बसा हुआ है वहाँ उनको जमीन की मालकी दी जाएगी और उसका प्रावधान सरकार ने किया और 2017 में 1 जनवरी से मालकी पट्टे का आवंटन शुरू हो गया। और जिस संस्था की जमीन है, जिस गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट की जमीन है, वो उसका मालकी पट्टा दे सकता है, ऐसा वो शासन आदेश था। तो उस आदेश के अनुसार हमारे नागपुर में अलग अलग गवर्नमेंट की जो योजनाएं हैं, गवर्नमेंट की जो संस्थाएं हैं, उनकी अलग अलग जगह पर जमीन है। और जैसा कि हमारे यहाँ नागपुर महानगर पालिका की कुछ जमीन पर स्लम्स बसे हुए हैं, कुछ नागपुर सुधार प्रन्यास की जमीन पर स्लम बसे हुए हैं, कुछ सरकारी जमीन पर, गवर्नमेंट की जमीन पर, नजूल की जमीन पर स्लम बसे हुए हैं। तो उन सभी को स्लम को पट्टे देने का अधिकार उस डिपार्टमेंट को दिया गया था और उसकी प्रक्रिया 1 जनवरी 2017 से प्रारंभ हुई। और उसके लिए एक बड़ा आधार सरकार ने जो लिया नागपुर के पट्टे के संदर्भ में, वो ये है कि प्रधानमंत्री ने जो घोषणा की कि 2022 तक सबको आवास दिया जाएगा और सबके लिए आवास योजना के तहत ये जो स्लम वासी है उनको घर के जमीन का अधिकार यदि रहा, मालकी पट्टा रहा, तो उनको वहाँ सरकार की तरफ से लोन की सुविधा और सब्सिडी की सुविधा मुहैया करना एक घोषणा थी। उसके अनुसार ये सबके लिए आवास योजना के तहत इन लोगों को मालकी पट्टा देना चाहिए, ऐसा सरकार ने आदेश निकाला और उसकी प्रक्रिया शुरू हुई। नागपुर में उसके लिए पट्टे के लिए सर्वे हुआ, PTS सर्वे हुआ और सर्वे होने के बाद अलग अलग एजेंसी ने सर्वे किया है। जैसे कि नागपुर सुधार प्रन्यास के लिए अलग एजेंसी थी, महानगर पालिका के लिए अलग एजेंसी थी और कलेक्टर लैंड के लिए अलग एजेंसी थी। तो ये सर्वे होने के बाद झुग्गी वासियों को अपने जरूरी दस्तावेज सरकार को, प्रशासन को देना था और वो देने के बाद ही सरकार इस बारे में काम शुरू करती थी। तो इस ढंग से नागपुर में पट्टे की प्रक्रिया चालू हुई। उसमें खास तौर पे ये था कि जो 2010 तक बसी हुई बस्तियां है और जो अधिकृत बस्तियां है उनके लिए पट्टे का ये प्रावधान है और जो अनधिकृत बस्तियां उनका अभी तक कोई निर्णय नहीं हुआ। लेकिन जो अधिकृत बस्तियों में रहवासी है उनके पास यदि 2010 तक का रहवासी प्रमाण पत्र है और वो अधिकृत है तो उनको पट्टे देने का ये प्रावधान है। और ये पट्टे जो दिए जा रहे हैं वो मालकी पट्टा रजिस्ट्री के साथ दिया जा रहा है, यानी केवल एक पट्टा या एक कागज देकर नहीं, तो वहाँ बाकायदा एक रजिस्ट्री गवर्नमेंट ऑफिस में हो रही है और उसके कारण वो पट्टा उनको मिल रहा है रजिस्ट्री के साथ। और ये पट्टा दोनों पति पत्नी के नाम से कंबाइंडली दिया जा रहा है और 30 साल का यह लीज पट्टा है। और उसमें विशेषता यह है कि जिनके पास जितनी जमीन है उतने जमीन का पट्टा उन्हें मिल रहा है और अधिकतर 500 स्क्वायर फीट का जो पट्टा है, जमीन है, वो निःशुल्क देने का प्रावधान है और 500 स्क्वायर फीट से अधिक यदि जमीन है तो उसके लिए शुल्क देना पड़ेगा, लेकिन उसका शुल्क अलग अलग तय हुआ है। तो ये करीब करीब निःशुल्क पट्टा है और नागपुर में अधिकतर लोगों के पास जमीन का जो प्रमाण है 500 स्क्वायर फीट तक है और कुछ लोग उससे भी अधिक है, तो उनके लिए कुछ शुल्क लगा के उनसे वो पट्टे का मूल्य लेकर उनको दिया जा रहा है। लेकिन वो मूल्य भी बहुत अधिक नहीं है, बहुत नाम मात्र दर से उनसे ये लिया जा रहा है। ये पट्टे देने के लिए नागपुर शहर में, नागपुर महानगर पालिका में एक भाड़े पट्टा सेल करके सरकार ने बनाया है और वो पूरा प्रक्रिया नागपुर महानगर पालिका की जमीन का जो पट्टा है देने की कर रही है। उसके बाद नागपुर सुधार प्रन्यास जो NIT हम जिसको बोलते हैं, उसने भी अलग से एक डिपार्टमेंट बना के ये काम चालू किया है। और नजूल में जो सरकारी जमीन है, कलेक्टर की जमीन है, उनको भी एक प्रक्रिया के तहत पट्टे का काम चालू है। नागपुर में जो पट्टे का प्रावधान हुआ उसके कारण एक बात हुई कि भी झुग्गी वासियों को उनको जमीन का अधिकार मिला है। और सबसे बड़ी बात ये हुई कि उनका जो विस्थापन का संकट था, हर वक्त विस्थापित होने का जो डर था, वो दूर हुआ है। और झुग्गी वासी जहाँ बसे हुए हैं वहीं पर उनको उनके घर कायम हो रहे हैं, जिसके कारण उनका जो लाइवलीहुड है जो कि वो इफेक्टेड नहीं हो रहा, वो लाइवलीहुड कायम रह रहा है। और उनके जो काम का ठिकाना है वो भी पहले जैसा था, जितनी दूरी पर था उतना ही है, इसलिए उनको उतनी दिक्कत नहीं जा रही है। और उनके लिए एक बहुत अच्छा ये पट्टा एक्ट आधार हुआ है। और घर की जमीन के रजिस्ट्री मिलने के बाद उसका एक आधार हो गया कि उनको वो बैंक से लोन भी ले सकते हैं। उसके लिए नागपुर महानगर पालिका की तरफ से एनओसी भी दी जा सकती है, रियलिटी भी उनको एनओसी दे रही है। और सरकारी योजनाओं का भी लाभ वो लेने के लिए सक्षम है, उसके लिए पात्र होते हैं। और प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना के तहत जो सब्सिडी का प्रावधान है उसका भी लाभ उनको मिल सकता है। ऐसे करीबन 1000 लोगों ने सब्सिडी घर बनाने के लिए मांगी है और करीबन 300 लोगों को महानगर पालिका ने इसके लिए मंजूरी प्रदान की है। तो उनका एक सुरक्षा कवच करके हम लोग मालकी पट्टे को देख सकते हैं। और बैंक से भी कर्जा लेने की उनको सहूलियत है। और कुछ लोगों ने इस बारे में भी प्रयास किया है कि हम लोगों को पट्टा मिला है, रजिस्ट्री मिली है, तो बैंक से लोन लेके हम लोग कुछ अच्छा घर बनाए। वैसे बहुत सारे लोगों के घर बहुत अच्छे बने हैं, उनको आवश्यकता के बहुत 20% लोग ऐसे होंगे जिनके घर कच्चे हैं, तो उसके लिए बनाने के लिए तैयार है, तो वो बैंक से लोन लेके या सब्सिडी लेके अपना घर बना सकते हैं। एक अच्छा प्रावधान उनके लिए हुआ है। अब नागपुर में जवाहरलाल नेहरू अर्बन लिविंग मिशन जब था तब BSV के तहत कुछ स्लम्स में मकान बना के दिए गए थे, जहाँ पर जो बसे हुए लोग हैं उनको वहीं पर स्थायी किया गया था। उनको भी मालकी पट्टा मिल रहा है और वो भी प्रोग्राम चल रहा है। बहुत सारी बस्तियों में ये उनको पट्टे मिले हैं, उनकी रजिस्ट्रियाँ हो चुकी है। हमारा एक कहना है ऐसा कि अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग की बात सरकार कहती है, तो जो स्लम वासी है नागपुर के अधिकतर लोग, उन लोगों ने अपने घर अपने पैसों से, अपने श्रम से अच्छे बनाए हैं, तो वही एक अफोर्डेबल उनके घर है। और जिनकी क्षमता नहीं है, जो बना नहीं सकते, तो उनके लिए सरकार जो सब्सिडी दे रही है उसका लाभ वो ले सकते हैं और कर्जा भी ले सकते हैं और लोन लेकर भी अपना घर बना सकते हैं। इतनी सहूलियत हो चुकी है। अब कुछ चैलेंजेस भी अभी है हमारे सामने कि जो बहुत ही नदी नाले के साइड में जो बसी हुई बस्तियां है, उनको वो प्रावधान है कि उनको पट्टा नहीं दिया जाएगा, तो इसलिए उनके पुनर्वास का भी मुद्दा है। तो महानगर पालिका ने ये तय किया है कि उनको उचित पुनर्वास किया जाएगा और जो भी प्रोजेक्ट अफेक्टेड लोग रहेंगे उनके लिए घर का प्रावधान उन लोगों ने किया है। उसके बाद जो प्राइवेट लैंड पर बसे हुए स्लम्स वासी है उनके लिए भी सरकार ने 2019 में सितंबर में एक GR निकाला था कि वो प्राइवेट लैंड के बसी हुए बस्ती के लोगों को भी पट्टा दिया जाएगा। और वो जिसकी जमीन होगी उसको नोटिफिकेशन निकाल के फिर उसको TDR देकर वो जमीन रिलीज की जाएगी और वहाँ पर लोगों को पट्टे दिए जाएंगे। तो उसके लिए महानगर पालिका को उस संदर्भ में एक ठहराव प्रस्ताव महानगर पालिका की सभा में करना आवश्यक था। तो महानगर पालिका ने अभी जनवरी में उस बारे में एक प्रस्ताव पारित किया है और उसकी प्रोसेस चालू है। तो यहाँ पर जो प्राइवेट लैंड के ऊपर बसे हुए लोग हैं उनको भी जमीन की मालिकियत मिलने की प्रोसेस चालू हो गई है। तो नागपुर एक मॉडल हो सकता है भारत में कि जहाँ पर पट्टे मिल रहे हैं और घर को एक सुरक्षा मिल रही है। तो अभी तक करीबन नागपुर में 1 लाख लोगों को, 1 लाख परिवारों को पट्टे देने की घोषणा हुई है, जो कि सब पात्र लोग हैं। लेकिन अभी तक जो कोरोना काल था, लॉकडाउन था, 1-2 सालों से काफी धीमी गति से ये सब काम चल रहा था। तो भी अभी तक हम लोग सब लोगों ने प्रयास करके करीबन 5000 से अधिक लोगों को जमीन की रजिस्ट्री हुई है नागपुर में, और बाकी लोगों की प्रोसेस चालू है, लेकिन लॉकडाउन में सब इससे काफ़ी दिक्कतें आई और आगे भी आने की संभावना है। तो भी हम लोग उसके लिए सक्षमता से काम कर रहे हैं। और एक चैलेंजेस और था हम लोगों के सामने कि जिन बस्तियों पर आरक्षण है, रिजर्वेशन है कुछ चीज़ का, तो वो आरक्षण हटाना ये एक चैलेंज था। तो हम लोगों ने सरकार के ही आधार लेकर, सरकार का ही जो शासकीय निर्णय है उसका आधार लेकर हम लोगों ने वो रिजर्वेशन कैंसिल करने के लिए महानगर पालिका को बाध्य किया। महानगर पालिका ने हमारी एक बस्ती है लक्ष्मीनगर, जहाँ पर स्कूल का आरक्षण था, वो आरक्षण हटाने के बाद ही उनको पट्टे का आवंटन हो सकता था। तो उस आरक्षण हटाने के लिए हम लोगों को 2 साल प्रयास करने पड़े, और वो आरक्षण लास्ट ईयर हटा, और उसके बाद अभी उस बस्ती में पट्टे वाटप हुआ, रजिस्ट्री हुई है, और करीबन 60 लोगों को वहाँ पट्टे मिले हैं, रजिस्ट्री मिली है। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा काम नागपुर में, एक हिस्टोरिकल काम हम सब लोगों ने मिलकर किया है। और हम लोगों का कहना है कि यदि हम लोग सब लोग संगठित होकर ये स्लम्स से मुद्दे पर यदि सरकार को बाध्य करें, सरकार की तरफ अच्छे ढंग से एडवोकेसी करें और सरकार के सामने अपनी बातें रखें, तो जरूर उस बारे में सरकार का तरफ से पॉजिटिव रिस्पांस आता है। और खास तौर पे जो राजनीतिक दल है उनको यदि ये मुद्दा समझा, उन लोगों को यदि उन्होंने सीरियस ले लिया, तो ये कोई भी मुद्दा छूटने के लिए दिक्कत नहीं आती है। ये हम लोगों का सीख है, हम लोगों ने जो सीखा है कि सभी लोगों का सहयोग लेकर जनता को संगठित करके जनता की शक्ति दिखा के हम लोग जमीन का अधिकार मिला सकते हैं, और हम लोगों ने ये काम किया है। और नागपुर का एक अच्छा उदाहरण, हम लोगों ने एक मिसाल कायम की है। तो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग जो सरकार का है, वही हम लोग कहते हैं कि यदि जमीन का अधिकार जनता को दिया जाए, उनके पास यदि जमीन हो, जमीन का मालकी पट्टा हो, रजिस्ट्री हो, तो वो खुद जमीन पर अपने घर अच्छे ढंग से बना सकते हैं, और यही अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है, ऐसा मुझे लगता है। थैंक यू मुझे बोलने के लिए कहा, और मुझे ये अवसर प्रदान किया, इसलिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आयोजकों का।
थैंक यू, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। ये बहुत अगर चर्चा कर सकते थे इस मुद्दे के ऊपर, काफी चर्चा चल रहा है। पट्टा देना अच्छा है बुरा है, उसका अच्छाई बुराई बहुत सारे बात। वो पट्टा मिलने के बाद क्या कर रहे हैं लोग, कोऑपरेटिव बना रहे हैं क्या, अलग अपना बना रहे हैं, ये बहुत सारे सवाल इसमें मेरे ख्याल से आएगा। लेकिन अपने पास कितना वक्त होगा पता नहीं इसका फॉलो अप करने के लिए। तो अभी मैं कीर्ति शाह जी को कहेंगे। वो फाउंडर प्रेसिडेंट है इंडिया हैबिटेट फोरम का, practicing architect. He was appointed by the Prime Minister's National Commission on Urbanization in the mid-80s. He chaired a working group on urban poverty in India. Kirti Shah has many years, 40 plus years working life in 6 parallel and overlapping streams that include architecture practice, grassroots work, with work in NGO and policy advocacy, disaster reconstruction, his contribution to institutional development and consultancy. हम सब इनको पहचानते ही हैं। कीर्ति भाई।
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Thank you, Binaji. Thank you, Marina. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this. Let me tell you, this is a very important initiative, very useful initiative, because sharing up this nature on housing policies, program, investment is very essential. And especially, I think this is happening in historical context. So it's not only what is happening now, what happened earlier. Now, one of the reasons I think is very important is this, that unlike what used to happen earlier, where we're complaining about nothing happening, scene is very different. Much is happening, and much is being built, under Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. I don't know whether anyone saw an article which the minister has written in Indian Express today, talking about 11 million houses under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. And of course, 22 million houses under Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. So huge amount of work is being done. Huge investment is happening. And unfortunate part of the story is this, that when we talk about housing, we are talking about square feet, we're talking about number of units built, we're talking about FSIs. What we easily forget is about people, people who stay in these houses, people who occupy these houses. And quality is something very important when we really talk about, because these families spend years and years, sometimes they spend decades, sometimes, generational growth happens. A child who is now a child will live in that house and really grow and become a citizen. And therefore, and this house is also define the quality of urban space. And therefore, I think time has come not only to look at numbers, also to look at the quality, also to look at the processes, also to look at delivery system, also to look at what is it doing to people, what is it doing to society, what is it doing to the cities. So it is in that context, I'm trying to make my small presentation today. I wanted to kind of, make a small confession that I rarely talk about projects. As a matter of fact, I don't even remember when I last talked about Project TOB. But the reason I'm talking about this project is this, that it is something very special. And most of the people who may not remember this because it happened a long time back, there are a lot of lessons to be taken home from this particular experience. The one project I'm talking about is called Vasna project. Ankisha, are you sharing the screen? Ankisha? Ankisha?
Yeah, she's trying to share the screen. Are you having some problem with that? Maybe Chinmay, can you help her? Maybe?
Ankisha? Yeah, she's sharing. Okay. While that opens, let me tell you, this project is called Vasna project. Its real name is Integrated Urban Development Project, IUDP, Ahmedabad. And this project was to rehabilitate. Next, Ankisha, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, this is the project, Integrated Urban Development Project, Vasna, Ahmedabad. This was to kind of rehabilitate 2,250 flood-affected slum families, about 15,000 people. This happened in mid-70s, so I'm sorry, I'm talking about, I think something 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And this was an early example of public-private people partnership. And I believe, and I claim time and again everywhere, that this is a very unique project anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, it has never been replicated. And I'll come back and say when. Next. This is the project. You see, this happened in 1972. There was Sabarmati riverfront flooded badly. You could see, I think, Ahmedabad, I think Sabarmati never floods. There's hardly have any water. But that was a very special year, flooded badly. About 5,000 slum families living on the river were washed away. And this particular project came into existence. And I'm going to talk about why and how it came into existence. Next. Well, I think that particular, can we go back? Can we go back? One slide back. Yes. This is back one slide. Okay, the next slide. Next slide. Next. Please hold on. No. Oh God, please go back on the next slide, earlier slide. Oh, yeah, okay. This is a very interesting picture, and I wanted to show it. This is not only symbolism. This is something gave us huge amount of ideas. When we were asked to design this project, for 15,000 people, and this was a slum rehabilitation project, I invited, I think, something like 100 slum kids and asked them to draw 3 pictures. Picture of the flood, picture of what happened when they were given temporary location, and third is their dream house. This particular picture talks about three. The first picture is the flood. What happened? People had come to see floods on the bridge. They were sheltered under Le Corbusier's museum and temporary one. What is most important is the image of the dream house they wanted to have. And if you really see that carefully, they talk about water pipe, they talked about toilet, they talk about storage, they talk about weathercock, so that they have an announcement. This was a picture which told us enormous story in terms of how to design this program. Next. This particular project was meant for, as I said, 15,000 people, some 2,250 families. This family was staying on the river. You could see some 20 clusters in which they were located. And this entire beginning of the project happened because an NGO, in this particular case, I wrote a letter to the municipal commissioner saying these families were living under very stressful conditions for a long time. They required a better relocation. They said up till now it had not worked because people never ask questions. And I said this time communities must be moved to participate in decision making, and then said this should not be a housing project but a development program of which housing should be a part. Said there should be no forced eviction. People should be allowed to make voluntary choices, and this should be people-centric housing, not multi-story towers, but ground floor courtyard houses. This is what one said in a letter that I sent, and that led to a housing project. I will come back and then we talk about it, what makes it special. This is a kind of next. This is the kind of houses that you see. There are 4 houses with a veranda, which is a room, a kitchen alcove, a storage alcove, a backyard service yard shared between 4 families, bathroom for each family, and toilet shared by 2 families. On the other side, you see a side plan of 2,050 families, where each and every family had a large open to front courtyard. Next, we'll go very quickly. No, this is the site which shows where people are locating on the riverbed, 20 clusters, and where they were relocated in a new site where 2,250 houses were built. Next. Well, this is the site plan, I think, and I'll show you a better picture. What this shows is this, that these are small houses, only ground floor structure, each and every house facing a big courtyard, interlinking courtyard, because that is what we learned from an earlier housing project we had done, where a courtyard was confined to families who were living in this courtyard. And we thought, because 19-20 communities were moving from different clusters to one location, it was absolutely essential that there were overlapping courtyards, so people passed from one to other and interacted. Next, quickly. Well, this is the site plan. This has 2,250 houses. This was 46 acres of land, which was given by municipal corporation. As you see, each house, there's a cluster of 4 units, cluster of 8 units, and all built around courtyards. What you also could see is a very interesting layout of roads, which essentially terminated into, there was no road space in front of houses because they were all courtyards. And at the corner of each street, there was shopping. In the center, there was a shopping center, there was amphitheater, the green room space, there were a number of community centers, and there was school at the end. So very, very quick. This was the kind of site plan that we designed. Next up, these are the kind of houses you could see. These are 8 in the front. That there's a backyard, and I will show other photograph. And the large tree that you see is a very large courtyard around which houses are built. Next. You could see this courtyard, series of overlapping courtyards, and we had no problem of density We had no problem of underbuilding. Next. I'll come back to all this. Next, this is the community center. I just wanted to kind of show this particular community center because it had all the facilities, but what is interesting about community center was this entire community center was built using second-hand material. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation had animal shed. We found out that they were breaking it. We worked out a contract with the municipal corporation and bought all the bricks, all roofing material, all girders, and built this entire community center at the cost of 18,000 rupees. Next. This program also had a very interesting income supplementation program. We developed a women's cooperative. 2 women were trained at NID for a year. They started a women's cooperative. It's become internationally famous. It is still operational after 40 years. They make beautiful patchwork and earn money. Next. 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 Okay. And this also had a crash and many other things. Next. 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 Well, this is what has happened to houses. It was all ground story structure. People have built on ground and one upper. And because it was integral part of the contract that they cannot encroach upon courtyard, they could build first floor, second floor as they like. Next. Now, this is the most important part of the story, relevance of this program 40 years down the line. First, project did not exist. Poor's vulnerability to food floods existed. An NGO intervention in form of a letter to municipal commissioner created the project from nowhere. And that was at that time was a very small and very unknown NGO. And let me kind of repeat, the credit for this project should not go to NGO. Credit to the project should go to the government and the authorities because they listened, they responded, and they did what this thoughtful NGO had suggested. And believe me, that this required nothing more than a letter. It was not a hardcore advocacy. What happened was we just gave a good idea that it required attention, that people must be involved, not a housing project, but a development project, which housing was a part, and turn-bound implementation through a non-bureaucratic people channel. Next. Next. Well, so what were the innovations? I'm going to talk about 16 innovations very quickly. I have just about 7-8 minutes left now. First was, it was NGO was appointed a project leader and asked to design the entire project. Then an autonomous project committee to implement the project was created. It had a municipal commissioner, a chairperson, and project director, NGO person as project secretary. And he was in charge, the project committee was in charge of full implementation. All decision-making, including finances, remained with project committee. Special project account was opened in a bank with money from Government of India, Gujarat, money from Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, money from HUDCO, and money from Oxfam. What I'm saying is, for a municipal project, for a government and funded project, responsibility and management of funding remain in the hand of NGO and municipal commissioner. I was a project director and a municipal commissioner was a project chair, and we jointly handled the money. All the money was handled by this committee. Government of Gujarat, Chief Municipal Engineer, Oxfam, community members were with the members of the committee. Committee met regularly once a month. I don't remember 1 month's meeting out. There was a concession committee which did a huge amount of quality monitoring and progress and cost monitoring. You won't believe me. But if we really felt that concession was gone up by 10 rupees, concession committee will meet and say how to save 10 rupees. In a project lasting 1.5 years, there was not a penny's cost escalation. Next. Next. In terms of design, this was remarkably interesting design. It was detailed consultation with community groups, with wooden models through community organizers and designers. We have 20 models floating around in the community where people could design, where people could express themselves. Design was based on a feedback studies of a similar project we have done in Nadia 3 years ago, where we spent 2 months studying what worked, what did not work. We built all in the houses and individual houses, ground floor structure. There's nothing on top of it. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation proposed to construct multi-floor apartment that was rejected by the committee and rejected by the community. Cluster of 4 houses with service yard in between has been built. Into each house has a room, kitchen alcove, storage alcove, individual bathroom, and a toilet shared by 2 families. All 2,500 houses are built around good size courtyard, 40 feet by 40 feet. And courtyard has always worked as a central family room, while individual houses are essentially private enclaves. As I mentioned earlier, interlinking courtyards were created in order to kind of see that people interact and go from one to other place. Permission was granted to each family to extend vertically whenever they wanted. They were not allowed to encroach courtyards. Today, after 45 years, no one has encroached. I'll finish it fast. Encroach. Other high density have been achieved of 170 families per hectare despite ground floor structure. Next. Construction, 11 rupees a square foot. People were invited who wanted to participate in construction. A special colony was created where some 120 families lived to build this construction. Next. Participation was the most important aspect, as I said, in design, in affordability design, in feedback from earlier, voluntary choice of relocation. Not a single family out of 2,000 family was moved by force or creation. They only moved if they're convinced about advantages. Next. Okay. Cost sharing was a very interesting formula. Land came from the government of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, Government of India, Gujarat paid part finances. Part finance was given by community through HUDCO loan. Infrastructure was provided by Municipal Corporation, and community mobilization and engagement funded by Oxfam. Next. This is the most important. Neighbor choice is the most important one. And this is where I take 1 minute and stop. Now, community composition. This was a project where community composition was 50% Muslims, 48% Hindus. Still participatory process of neighbor selection was selected in a city which saw Hindu-Muslim riots every 3 months, every 3 years. And that was based on an understanding a neighbor is a social asset, especially in poor communities. And therefore, we felt good neighbor was very important. Proposal was given by municipal corporation because they're Hindus and Muslims, and Ahmedabad has a history of riots. Put them on one side, Hindus, put Muslims on the other side. We rejected that. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation projected second proposal, said draw lots. Whoever gets a lottery, they will get the house. That was rejected because we said that will create disharmony. These families were given open choice to select 3 kinds of neighbors. Each family selected toilet sharing neighbor. Each family selecting 3 backyard sharing neighbors, and each family selecting 7 front yard sharing neighbors. You know, mathematically, this is very, very complicated, very difficult. People struggle with for 8 months. We helped the process, but finally, first 1,300 families made individual choices, and there were dramatic results. Where Hindus sharing toilet with Muslims, where Muslims and Hindus sharing backyard, we had Hindu, Muslims and Wagris sharing courtyards. And we asked this question. I remember talking to a family. I said, why did you select, a Muslim as your toilet sharing neighbor? He said, he's not Muslim, he's my friend. That is a very, very different interpretation. So the whole process of project design, giving importance to people, listening to them, developing, I think, an entire system of repayment, creating a project committee which essentially allowed project to take shape in the context that people wanted it is something, in my understanding, has not been replicated. One more minute, Meena. Next slide.
Okay.
Next. Okay. Now, there was a social action component. I need to talk about this. This was very important because as I said, we worked on income, we worked on education, we worked on transport. We bought 100 cycles as a part of the project in order for people to go back to the city where they had their own occupation. Next. And as I said, the social, education, economic component. Next, we started a surgeon program which we're running for last 25 years. It's the only children's program which focuses on creativity of children. We were not talking about nutrition. We are not talking about poverty. We developed that project and ran out because if creativity, I think, is improved in children, they know what kind of citizen they make. Now is very important. Now, if you go to Vasna, there's a complete polarization. 100% families are Muslims, not a one Hindu family. I'll come back. I don't have time to talk about it, but I'll mention why it happened. Systematic disruption that happened with Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation refusing to complete committee led people to refuse to honor repayment commitment in installment. But not a single courtyard has been encroached. 2- and 3-story houses have been built. I personally feel there's a great need to go back and study this project 45 years down the line. I'm trying to find resources and try to do a book on this. I want to go back. I want to trace back families. Where have they gone? And what has happened to cities in the context of 40 years? So this is one project in my mind, which I have not seen replicated anywhere for its understanding of people, for its people commitment, for its design ability, for its ability to kind of stand up with authorities and giving people full freedom to choose themselves. So, but still project success, what I want to say is this, that good ideas do not necessarily replicate. Project success means little. Extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary individuals create special projects. Scaling up, replication gets stalled, does not happen, because by that time, wider structural issues take over. And therefore, projects succeed. But to replicate them, to really kind of make them part of the systemic change is very, very difficult. We need to do lots of work, and therefore examples are not enough. This particular project, which I did 40 years ago, I myself have not been able to replicate anywhere. I've not been able to find clients. I have not been able to find circumstances. I have not been able to find out leaders who would understand and do this. So there's a huge learning involved in this. And I thought, I'm sorry it took a little more longer, but I thought I'll share this with all of you. I promise Marina that I'll do this.
Thank you so much, Kirti bhai. Very, very interesting. As usual, simple and educative, and all about a multidisciplinary approach, I think, which always makes you different, Kirti bhai. Thank you very much. We hope to hear more about such things. This is only a fraction of all the things that you've done, but it's very interesting. And your thoughts about going back to study and also to trace where people are. This is something that we have been thinking of also for the mill workers' housing, to find out where those people are who were actually given these houses and why they gave it up and went away, because that could be a very interesting sociological survey. Thank you very much, Kirti bhai. And now I call upon Mr. Ravindra Singh from Rajasthan. He's a social worker. He is actively working on issues concerning different issues concerning public interest. He's president of the Committee for the Protection of Public Properties, that is Lok Sampatti Sanrakshan Samiti, and which has agitated on many public issues before governments and courts on the subject of urban planning, on the master plan, on environment, on urban poverty, housing, good governance, and protection of public properties. So many petitions have also been filed by the organization to which he belongs. Mr. Ravindra Singh. 10 to 12 minutes, please, not more. Thank you. Mr. Mr. Ravindra Singh? Is he here?
Yeah, I don't know, Meena. There's someone with iPhone 11. I don't know if that is him.
Mr. Ravindra Singh, are you there? Ravindra Singh ji?
Wait, let me call him.
Ji.
But in the meanwhile, why don't you start discussion, Meena?
I don't know how much time we have for discussion, Marina.
Well, it's already past 5. But if anyone had, I think there were some questions in the chat box. I think maybe we can just take a few of these questions. And if we can go till maybe 5:15, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, so one of the first questions that I saw here, has somebody been taking a look at the questions? Has somebody been following? Shweta is calling, I think. Marina, have you got the questions? I saw
so
some.
one question is about profitability of the developer in the SRA scheme, which is directed to me actually.
So just go ahead. By the time we find Mr. Singh.
Yeah. So this SRA schemes are public-private partnerships, and in this kind of an endeavor, exactly estimating the profitability of the developer is difficult, and it is not also considered advisable. However, government has probably felt that the profits made by developers are huge. So as a result of that, the recent amendments have been made in the DC regulations to regulate the use of TDR. So earlier there were geographical restrictions on use of TDR. One could use it in the northern direction in Mumbai, or in between there were high court interventions for not allowing TDR to be used near railway lines, things like that, developed areas. Now it is indexed. So the ready reckoner values of different areas is considered, and the TDR advantage is neutralized depending on where you want to use the TDR. Suppose if I generate a TDR at A place and I'm trying to use it at B place, which is more valuable in terms of ready reckoner, my TDR availability reduces. So I can use only lesser amount of TDR because I'm using it at a more valuable place. So this is one measure which has been recently taken by the government, and already amendments are carried out in the DSU regulations for this purpose, with an aim to sort of what do you say, cap or restrict the profitability or high profits which government thought were being taken by the developers. But it depends on whether we get market response. I mean, after this amendment, how many new SRA projects under the 3.11 scheme come will decide whether this measure has worked in which manner. Has it discouraged developers because they don't anymore consider this as financially viable, or they still go ahead with these projects and with reduced margins. So this is yet to be known. So there is no clear-cut understanding of the amount of profits or the percentage of profit which developer makes. It's basically the land cost which is getting subsidized in the whole process. So it's a very complex thing. The whole idea of 2.5 FSI being given was based on certain assumptions that, okay, this will be the cost, this will be the cost of temporary transit accommodation being provided, cost of demolition, cost of construction of new tenements of a certain size, 225 to start off with. Based on that, this idea of 2.5 FSI came up. Now this FSI has been increased to 4 in certain cases. So much more building construction can happen. So probably it also, with that, increases the profitability of an SRA scheme. But pinpointedly saying a number is not possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a related question saying, I was also wondering if there's an ideal density for a parcel of land where there will be economies of scale rather than diseconomies where everyone prospers. I think it's related to what you have just said. But if any of the other panelists have, any comments there about an ideal density, because really right now all affordable housing is relegated to the density of how much density it creates. So does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yes, can I come in, Marina?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
You know, Sulakhshana was giving example of that particular housing project. I'm not
See, housing
Sulakhshana ji,
density. Yeah. Can
okay.
you hear me?
Yeah,
wait
please.
just a moment, Kirti.
Let's hear Sulakhshana first.
Okay, okay. Let's have Sulakhshana first then.
I'll come.
Can you switch off your video, please? Sulakhshana, can you switch off your video?
Yeah, I will.
Now you can hear me.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, density is a function of land prices. And density is also related to the crowding and the unhealthy environment high densities create in cities. There is no ideal density as such, but the recommended maximum density is not more than 400 per hectare. While in Mumbai already the densities are much higher. BDD Chawl is constructed at a higher density than this maximum. And now that's why many urban planners think that density doesn't matter, but density does matter because it affects light, ventilation, and height, and all the construction, it shadows. And that's why there is no ideal density as such. It depends on the type of housing. It depends on the type of construction, the heights of buildings, the number of people, and also the FSI. And basically, government is using tenement density against the higher FSI. And they actually in Mumbai development control rules, the maximum density is that they have completely removed. There is no cap on density, which is very detrimental for the whole city. And that doesn't mean there is no ideal density for a particular city or anything. The city has to decide what should be the density and FSI depending on the demand and supply and type of housing. Basically, I think this will answer your question. Density.
Thank you, Sulakhshana ji. Thank you. So,
can I come in?
Sure.
Yes, sure.
You know, Sulakhshana, and I just wanted, maybe sometime I should talk to you at length. You know, this whole density business in this country is a very big myth, and a very stupid myth at that. Let me tell you why. Do you know what is density in major part of Singapore? More than 28. What is FSI? I'm talking about FSI. 28. What is FSI in Manhattan? Somewhere between 32 and 36.
11 and 15. It's 11 and 15.
Yeah, no. So what I'm designing a project now today in Hyderabad. In Hyderabad, they have removed the whole concept of FSI. And the entire thing is left on margins. You know what is the FSI I achieved? I've achieved FSI of 6. In Ahmedabad, they were cribbing about 1.8 and 2 for a long time. To make it 2.5 was a great discovery. So this is one part. First of all, you've got to look at the whole aspect of FSI and density very different. That's number one. Number two, the buildings that that Sulakhshana was talking about, unfortunate part of the story is they are very stupidly designed. Issue is not, and there are two culprits. One is the building bylaw, which is a big culprit. Building bylaw, which is a big culprit, and headless architects or designer is the second culprit. Meena, I'm talking about this for a reason. I'm saying this particular discussion to be taken to a second stage. I'm willing to take responsibility personally at no cost that those projects, which Sulakhshana says are terrible, give me 10 days, I will change them dramatically with few changes in the building bylaws. You look at the design of that. So as a matter of fact, we are not only designing, we are designing very poorly. Our concept of housing is very static. We believe family is static. We believe income is static. We believe city is static. We believe location value is static. Nothing of it is static. And therefore, you've got to design for a dynamic situation. Like, say, for instance, I want to design, I'm doing it now. As a matter of fact, I have designed 18-story, 16-story, 12-story houses, where each family has open to sky terrace, whichever floor that is. I'm saying you design houses for the poor with terraces and let them kind of convert them into room 10 years down the line. What one is incremental design is absolutely possible. But the headless wonders that we have just don't understand this. Just competition that we launched called improving livability of small houses is basically that. Just imagine irresponsible manner in which 320 and 350 square foot houses are designed. Absolute rubbish. There is no thought into it. There is no thought about people. There is no thought about space. I was talking to someone day before. In fact, I wrote a note that the most optimal space is the airplane. Most optimal space, not even inch wasted. Is it ugly? Is it uncomfortable? Is not livable? Le Corbusier talked about house as a machine to live in. We just do not apply ourselves, and our Johnny's minister secretary does not understand. I'm at the moment trying to kind of convince Orissa government, who are developing a very large affordability housing project. I said, I'll show you 10 ideas how to do this. It's doable. It doesn't cost a penny extra. If what is required is little flexibility in building bylaws, which are rigid and frozen. Our building bylaws have been created to destroy creativity. They have not been created to solve problems, it's been created to create problems. And what I'm trying to say, Meena, is this: if you really want something to come out of it, there is a way of taking a step forward. Getting people together and talking for 2 hours is fine. But I know what are described as problems are possible to look upon as solutions. Problem is, solutions are in the wrong hands. Solutions are conceived wrongly, and they're being thrown on people. People do not understand what it is. They don't shout. And I personally feel you require a force like us in between, because I know it's ridiculous what is happening. There's no reason why such pathetic housing should be created. Look at what is being done. Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. Today's article by Hardeep Suri says we'll be completing, I think 1.2 million housing. You always get the numbers. You get how many built, where. You'll get, I think, how many has been built in which city, which state. No one tells you a word about quality. No one says a word about delivery system. No one says what's happened to the families and communities. And you could look at building bylaws. You could look at, I think, design system.
You've given us a new idea, Kirti Bhai, to look at we should have a session which would look particularly at the building bylaws. So
no, I mean, I'm getting something done on all levels, but I'm just saying, if you want to kind of get meaningful, because you see, it's one thing, I understand that I think Sulakhshana is sensitive, says terrible. I'm saying that terrible could be made into good. It doesn't require much. 1 week, and not a single penny.
I completely agree with Kirti Bhai, and which in case of BDD Chawls, what we have done is we have created alternatives to BDD present MHADA housing without any cost to government. and they should not be, government should not be greedy, and they should not go along the private way, the developers way. And that is solutions we have actually provided in our PIL, that we are not just opposing, which is bad, but we are proposing something which is doable, which is good. And at the same time, we also want to request the workers, the BDD Chawl residents, that when we found 40% of BDD Chawl residents are income taxpayers, they are not poor industrial workers anymore who were there in 1920s. The dynamism of city has helped them. The new generations are different than the 1920s and 1930s. So why should the government promise them and give them free housing? Is beyond our understanding, when they can very well pay through their EMI and the cost. Only thing is the land cost should not be transferred to the new housing. Land should have multiple models of management, which we have also suggested. So it's the rigidity and the greed of the government and the politicians and the boss which is acting against the people, and they have, people are the least interested in really understanding what is the problem, because they are also getting lured by the free housing, which is actually, we have understood that all that free housing is not free. They are paying through their health.
Yeah. They know they're paying for, there are a lot of other kinds of payments that are being made, not just by them, and that might be free for them, but the city is also paying and they are also paying. So yeah, so I think going into free housing is also one of the issues. As I said, we are constrained by time because it's a webinar. We hope we will be able to meet physically also very soon, but the webinars will continue. We will have more sessions. We hope that you will not come even if you're not a speaker, we want you to come for all of them, because we like to build a body of knowledge on these things and go towards solutions. So this is our first one. Thank you very much, because we've had some really amazing, many questions I think that are still not been dealt with, because there have been such complex presentations and so many questions in each of the presentations. And I know everyone hasn't got time to really develop, and lots of people who would have wanted to ask questions. We had quite a few participants. We have not been able to call the participants also to speak. We hope that we will be able to do that next time. So I want to say thank you, and I want to thank my colleagues, Shweta, Marina, and Chinmay as well, for all the work and for the hosting of this session. And particularly to all our speakers for the wonderful presentations, and to our participants for the patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you again in between the sessions as well, and then during the next session.
मीना जी ये सब हो सकता है यार.
ये सब हो सकता है, बिल्कुल सही है आपका कहना.
It's, you know, the problem is, I think, no, really, it's good.
Yes, we need to talk more, but you're absolutely right. It is possible. That's why we are doing this discussion. And we have also many people who are talking about older solutions, newer solutions. And that's why we are going back to MHADA and MMRDA and those also, to find out what are the good things, what are the bad things, what to keep and what to throw away. And you have yourself presented that whole Vasana thing, about which we all know. It's part of it's a textbook case. We've heard about it. I heard about it, so I don't know how many years ago.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any announcements, Marina, Shweta, etc.? Any announcements?
Nothing right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.